welcome to the business track of Magento Enterprise Cloud Edition. So over the next 45 minutes, myself and David Potts from Amazon are here to tell you a little bit more, go into a little bit more detail about the cloud offering, further to what we just talked about in the keynote. So, little legal slide there. I'll let you all read that, as I'm sure you want to. I want to start by talking a little bit about SaaS. Now, we are a big believer in SaaS. As Magento, we're a company that's just spun out of eBay. We're independent again. We've had to replace all of our applications and business systems and services. And we're making a big investment in SaaS applications, everything from our CRM systems to our finance systems, across the board, email, etc. We're like many companies, big advocates of SaaS. But the thing about SaaS is it's a really great fit for business-to-business applications. And it's completely disrupting the sort of the enterprise software space. But when we think about SaaS in a multi-tenant SaaS commerce environment, one of the big problems that we experience with SaaS is that we end up with the Stepford Wives effect. And in the world of sort of digital experiences, digital commerce experiences, we end up with this phenomenon on a multi-tenant SaaS environment where the sites end up being very similar to one another. And the ability to sort of really differentiate yourself and make changes to the site and to innovate and put that sort of unique DNA into the digital experience can sometimes be limiting. And so, we've always sort of been, big advocates at Magento. The single tenant sort of access to the code, the ability to build extensions and customizations is really important in the consumer-facing world of B2C and digital experience. Now, the other problem with typical sort of SaaS e-commerce environments is what we call the lock-in effect. One of the problems with a typical multi-tenant SaaS environment in the e-commerce space is that once you're in, it's very hard to get back out. And in fact, if you ever want to get back out, you have to change platforms. There is no way to take a multi-tenant SaaS application back into your own environment, back into your own data center. You are perpetually locked in to the vendor that you have chosen until such day that your contract ends, and then you have a painful 18-month migration project to move off of that vendor. And so one of the things about the new cloud offering, as I said on stage a moment ago in the keynote, it's based on Enterprise Edition. And so what that means is that in our contracts to you as prospective customers of the Cloud Edition is we'll give you complete flexibility to switch between Enterprise Edition and Cloud Edition. So what that means is if you're an existing Enterprise Edition customer, we'll let you migrate to Cloud. But more importantly, if you're a cloud customer and for some reason in the future you're not happy with being locked into our cloud, we'll let you take your application back into your cloud. Take it back into your own data center, into your own private cloud or to another public cloud. We will have complete flexibility in our contracts to let you take this back into your own control should you wish to. And so, our philosophy of all of this is around differentiation. We want to give you that control, that ability to really create unique experiences and sort of really differentiate your site. And we believe what we've built here with Enterprise Cloud Edition enables you to do just that because it's still that single tenant. You own your own code. You're not sharing any code with any other merchants. So you've got that complete 100% flexibility that you're used to and it's part of the sort of the Magento DNA. You still have that in our Cloud Edition. And that was very important to us as we sort of thought about how we would bring this product to market. So what I want to do just for the next 20 minutes or so is go into a little bit of a deeper dive of what we talked about in the keynote and sort of do a deep dive into what Enterprise Cloud Edition really is. And as I said earlier, it really starts with our partner, AWS. And so as merchants start moving on to our Cloud Edition, they will have the ability to host in one of 12 global AWS locations. And what this means is that we will let merchants host near where your customers are. And AWS have locations all around the globe. So we'll give you that complete flexibility to host your application close to where your customers are to make sure that you're getting as fast a site and as fast as an experience for your customers as possible. We have the complete elastic scalability of EC2. This means that we can scale up your sites in almost very, very rapid manner. And there's no real limitation as to how far we can scale. So typically, as we all know in the e-commerce world, we see very, very extreme spikes of demand, of traffic demand around the holidays. And with the Amazon infrastructure, we have complete flexibility to scale you for those spikes. We also have architected this in such a way that each merchant has their own dedicated AWS environment. So you're not actually sharing the infrastructure that you're running on with any other merchant. It's your infrastructure. But it's also designed in a triple redundant fashion. And what that means is that we are deploying the Magento application onto 3 separate stacks of infrastructure. But more than that, we also deploy them into 3 separate, what Amazon called redundancy or availability zones. And so this actually gives us more than triple redundancy. It actually gives us sort of 2 times triple redundancy. So we can offer to the merchants very, very high availability SLAs. What I'd like to do is invite up David Potes from Amazon AWS to talk a little bit more about the Amazon infrastructure and what Amazon brings to the table. So David, thank you.
So how many people are familiar with Amazon Web Services? All right, good. And how many are using it today? All right, so some of this may be review for you, but I think it's important to understand the foundational stuff to really understand what Magento has built on top of that. So when Peter talked about deploying close to the customers, we have a notion of regions, and we have regions all over the world. And so there's a notion of regions, and not only can you deploy close to your customers, but for many customers, data sovereignty is important. And keeping your data in a particular location is absolutely critical. Great example, customers in the EU, because of data protection acts, find it very important to keep that data within the EU. Now, we've got a number of new regions coming up. So if you look on the map there, you may see Canada, you may see India, you may even see an exotic place like Ohio. And kind of below the region level, we have a notion of what's known as an availability zone. And an availability zone, or I'll say AZ for short, really is a unique set of fault domains. And I can give you an example on that. If an availability zone is in a particular floodplain, other availability zones or AZs within that region will not be in that same floodplain. So think of it as an isolated zone where all of the fault domain is in one spot. So when we think about availability zones, most of the regions have 3 AZs. One actually has 4. And what the Magento folks have done have built this service on top of it, so they're taking advantage of multiple availability zones. So when Peter talked about triple redundancy, that goes all the way down to the hardware level, fire, electrical outage, networking. All of these are isolated and then kind of built up to give you that region. And it wouldn't be an AWS presentation without some badges of the folks that have really come to AWS and seen success there. And it really cuts across all sizes of companies and all sorts of businesses. From Dow Jones to Vodafone to the weather company. Customers of all industries and all sizes are using AWS to run their business. And a big fan of Forrester, and they seem to like us pretty well. They've assigned us into the leader quadrant for public cloud infrastructure. And we have more accreditations and certifications than anyone. So whether you're looking for SOC 2, SOC 3, the various ISOs, FedRAMP for the federal government, we've done a lot of work to make sure that we are following those controls, and we have succeeded in that probably far better than anyone thought at the outset. So I'd like to bring Peter back up, and he's going to go real deep into the platform as a service. Thank you.
Okay, so we built the baseline infrastructure with our partner, Amazon. And so next, on top of this, as I talked about in the keynote, we now introduce this innovative platform as a service, PaaS environment. Now, for the business users, the merchants, this is not something that you as a merchant will ever likely sort of log into or see, but it's absolutely critical for enabling your development teams, your development operations teams, and your release management teams. And ultimately what this does is it makes their lives easier. It makes it more efficient for your developers and your development operations teams to quickly do what we call continuous cloud integration. And this is really the ability for them to go from the keyboard to production in the shortest possible time with very, very high level of certainty and reliability about doing this. And so in the past, to get a little bit technical, and I'll try not to get too technical because there's another track next door where they're getting into the nitty-gritty of the technical stuff. But inside of the PaaS, effectively, you integrate the PaaS environment with your GitHub repository, with your Enterprise Edition code. And so with your code, the developers can spin up as many different branches, fork branches, create different branches for different projects that might be going on simultaneously. And they can very, very rapidly instantiate a new branch. And so what this means is a developer who can finish coding, check in their code, and then at the click of a button can instantiate almost instantaneously then an environment with a live URL, hand that to the business can do their acceptance testing, they can run automated tests against that, performance tests, code automation tests, and then at the click of another button, promote it straight to production in a fully automated fashion. No need to pick up the phone, no need to talk to your hosting operator, fully automated deployment into the production environment. And because we're running in that triple redundant environment, we do it in an automated staged environment where we can do a complete code release with absolutely no outage whatsoever and no loss of experience to the consumer who may be shopping on the site. So very high automation, very low touch support. A lot of the things that in the past you may have had to submit support tickets to your DevOps teams or to your hosting provider a lot of that now is automated in the PaaS. So it's really making life simpler for the development operations teams. Now the other part of this is just really kind of fun and interesting. We talked about this triple redundant, your own dedicated environment for production. But there's also this non-production environment, what we call this sort of containerized grid technology. And what this allows us to do is run many, many, many non-production instances all on the Amazon infrastructure. And so this gives us real scalability to allow you to have many, many different non-production instances, your UAT sites, your staging sites, your testing sites, sites for developers, etc. So really, really exciting and very easy to use technology there for your non-production environments. Another thing that's sort of really cool about the PaaS is the ability to instantiate and clone. So one of the things, just as an example, that you can do, let's say you've got some kind of problem in production, or there's something that's affecting just a subset of users in production, and typically diagnosing those things would be quite hard, especially if you can't diagnose it in a non-production environment. Well, now with the PaaS, at the click of a button, you can clone your production environment and create a copy of it, an exact copy with the exact same code, the exact same database. In fact, there's even security features where we can actually remove any sensitive data from that database, move out real customer names and real email addresses, and change configuration settings so that you're not replicating the production payment gateway settings, etc. So really, really powerful tools, for example, for your developers to find those bugs, diagnose them, and fix them. And again, all of this is very, very consistent, repeatable processes. So it's really all about driving developer efficiency, getting, like I said, that code from the developer's keyboard into production as quickly and reliably as possible. So that's our PaaS. Now, inside of the PaaS runs Magento Enterprise Edition. And this is just standard Enterprise Edition. It's going to be based on the 2.05 code base and going forward, and it'll support all of the future releases. We're doing quarterly releases now on Magento 2. It's a single tenancy architecture, as I talked about. So, everything that you are used to being able to do in Magento 2, you can do in the cloud. So it was fully compatible and works with all of the extensions that are in the new marketplace, all of the Magento 2 extensions. You have access to source code. You have your GitHub repository just as you do with Magento 2. Nothing different there. So you want to follow our best practices on how to do development. You want to make sure that that you're designing and building a path to upgradability exactly as you do today. But ultimately, you have access to source code the same as you do with Magento today. So there's no we're not putting any limitations on you whatsoever in this cloud environment. You can customize this exactly as you can with Enterprise Edition, and we have this quarterly release schedule. Now, from a performance management perspective, we recognize that a lot of our system integrators and a lot of our customers, typically will use performance management tools. And we've partnered with two great vendors, New Relic and Blackfire.io, to provide these tools out of the box for every Magento 2 merchant. And not just for the merchants, for your partners. So if you're working with a system integrator or solution partner, they will have access to these tools to make sure that they're optimizing your environment. And so New Relic gives us great sort of before and after performance monitoring of that production environment. You can identify issues and you can look and see how, when did they start occurring, what's the sort of root cause of the issue, and do that sort of real-time performance issue alerting. New Relic will let you know when there's a problem. Typically, we see these kind of problems immediately after we do a code release. There's something that the developers did in an extension or some kind of integration to a back-end system that's causing a problem after we did a code release. And so New Relic gives you some great tools to sort of diagnose those issues quickly and fix those problems on the site. And then Blackfire is a nice complementary tool that sits alongside New Relic. And this is really something then that the developers use to actually profile the what's actually causing the problem. So New Relic lets us know that there is a problem and gives us insights as to what that problem might be. But in terms of actually finding the root cause of the bad code, that SQL statement in the database or something that's causing the problem, Blackfire gives you those tools. And the nice thing with Blackfire is it can be run in the production environment. So we can actually diagnose the issue straight away in production without having to, clone and recreate the environment. So really great tool. So we think this will be really important for the system integrators and for our merchants to diagnose problems. And then, as I said on the keynote, we've partnered with Fastly for both for CDN as well as for DDoS protection. And Fastly is a great technology fit with Magento, because in Magento 2 we made a big bet on the caching infrastructure, and Fastly uses that same varnish caching infrastructure. So there's a very nice compatibility between Fastly and the existing varnish caching structure that's inside of Magento 2. And so with Fastly, they have these, what they call points of presence, all around the globe. So we can see the orange ones with our current locations and the blue, which are planned locations. And so what this means is that all of your content, both static content and dynamic content, images, videos, the pages themselves, are cached out at the edge. And so this can have a huge impact on two things. One, it really is accelerating the delivery of that content to your merchants, wherever they are around the globe. And so although your actual infrastructure may be hosted in North America, this allows you to give really rapid access to the site for the customers all around the globe, whether they're in Asia, whether they're in Europe. But it also significantly reduces the load on the actual Amazon AWS infrastructure, which lowers your cost of owning Magento in the cloud. So we're really pleased to announce these partnerships with Fastly, with New Relic, with Blackfire, and our partner Platform.sh, who are the provider of the PaaS technology. And then all of this, we sort of wrap around a set of services that are provided by Magento. So this is quite a big change for Magento. In the past, we've been a software company, an enterprise software company. We've sold licenses of software, and we've been the guardian of the community edition. But we're making a sort of little bit of a bold stance forward here, and moving into providing not just the software, but the support services around that software. So now for Magento Enterprise Cloud Edition, there's sort of one contract, one price, one throat to choke as it relates to both your hosting, your infrastructure, and the core Magento code, the Magento application. For issues, we have full 24/7 severity 1, P1 application and infrastructure support. So if there is an issue with your environment, we'll be on it right away, 24/7. We're actively monitoring the environment. So as it comes to scaling, we encourage you as a merchant to let us know when you're anticipating those peaks so we can plan ahead and double up that infrastructure and make sure that we're ready for that, the big sale event you have or the holidays or that Oprah moment or Shark Tank moment. But if you weren't expecting it and it happens, out of the blue, we have you covered because we're monitoring your environment 24/7. If we see a spike in demand, we will rapidly start doubling up that infrastructure and doubling it again and again and again as we need to make sure that your site stays up and performant at all times. I talked a little bit on stage about sort of our proactive patch application. In the past, Magento has always put the burden of patches on our merchants. So, we've always struggled a little bit to get sort of, compliance and to make sure that merchants and solution partners are, applying patches in a timely fashion. And what we're doing with, what we're going to be doing with the Cloud Edition is putting a lot more sort of effort into that to make it easier for you. And so that means that we will proactively go into your environment as patches come out, apply those patches, run automated run automated tests against those patches, and we'll notify you of the results of those tests. So we'll be able to say to you that we think that the application is already good to go, or that there's some issues that you or your solution partner need to look at to get, to some conflict that patch might have created. But ultimately, we're still putting the responsibility of pushing the patched application into production on the merchant. But again, that becomes very, very easy to do in the PaaS environment just at the click of a button. So we're really, really excited to take more of a proactive role in making sure that all of our merchants are compliant and always are running on the latest, most up-to-date patched version of Magento 2. And finally, all of this is solution partner friendly. In fact, there's really nothing that we've done here to change your existing relationship as a merchant with your solution partners. The solution partners that you work with, will still play very, very much the same active role that they do in your projects today. So they will still do all of the, upfront design work, the implementation work, building custom extensions for you, the integration work with your back-end systems, the strategic consulting work that they do. We're just making life easier. By providing these PaaS tools and providing this cloud environment, we're reducing complexity and we'll actually make life easier for our partners. So we're really, really excited. We think this is a great, great product, not just for merchants, but we think this is something that our partners will really, really get behind. Many of our partners have done parts of this, have built pieces of the stack. Many of our partners today already deploy on AWS. Some of our partners have built sort of some of the tools that we're providing here. But what we're really trying to do here is sort of standardize this and provide all of the best practices from the whole community into this cloud environment so that, we've got the whole backing of the Magento community in terms of the way that we're applying best practices to this. And we've got a very, very exciting roadmap in front of us. This is, in a way, a separate product from the core orange box of the core Magento 2 application. And we've got a very, very exciting roadmap of things that we can bring to market to make this even better over the next year. So that's a little bit about the product itself, going into a little more depth. And then what I want to talk about now is our pricing model and go-to-market. So I'm sure many of you in the room are either prospective cloud customers or, sort of potentially very, very interested in this solution. And the question that we've already been having is, well, how much does it cost? So let's get into this. So how will pricing work for the Enterprise Cloud Edition? Well, it's based on a number of factors. For those of you who are familiar with Magento 2, you'll know that with Magento 2, we changed our pricing model. So with Magento 1, we used to sell based on the number of servers that you needed. It was a server-based licensing model. And we switched away from that with Magento 2 to what we called a GMV tier-based pricing model, more of a value-based pricing model. And so what we end up with in cloud is a little bit of a hybrid between the two. So there's two sort of major inputs into our pricing model. The first is the GMV tier of the merchant. What is the annual revenue that the merchants are processing, their GMV, across all of the sites that they're running? But we also look at, across all of the sites that you're going to be running, what is your baseline traffic and order volume? Now, when I say baseline, what we're looking for is that sort of average day. What's the server capacity in AWS, the compute capacity in AWS that you'll be using on an average day? We don't care about your peaks. We're going to cover you for your peaks. So, those temporary peaks, those surges in traffic, we don't want to bill you or put costs in front of you where you're having to pay for all this, extra capacity in the server environment that you're not going to be using. So the way the pricing model works is a hybrid model based on your GMV and then based on the compute capacity that you need for that average day. And then there's some add-ons. There's things that you may want. You may want extra development environments. You may need some, more storage if you have a lot of high-res image videos and so forth. So there's a few sort of add-ons. But ultimately, what we come to with this model is an annual cloud fee. So very hopefully very simple for merchants to get their heads around, and we will, like I said, be able to give you pricing by the end of this month. We're making this generally available on the 1st of May. So what's included in the price? I'll go through this. So the Fastly and CDN and DDoS protection is there with very generous bandwidth allowances. We're not giving an unlimited allowance because there are some merchants that have a lot of high-res video, but we will give a very, very generous bandwidth allowance that will be more than sufficient for the majority of our merchants. And so if you need more than that, there will be the ability to purchase additional bandwidth allowance. There will be unrestricted versions of both New Relic APM and Blackfire.io. So if you want to use these tools, they're there. You just go use them. You don't have to pay extra. You don't have to worry about whether your solution partner has a license. They're there for all of our merchants to use. You get the full unrestricted Magento 2 Enterprise Edition license, exactly as you do today. So nothing different there. That's included in the price. You get access to the pass, so that all of the tools we talked about and included in there are sort of 8 non-production environments you can use. You can buy more if you need more. If you've got a large team and you're running a lot of non-production environments, you can have more environments there. You get the AWS environment with the dedicated triple redundant production environment, and we're including in this your surge compute capacity. So what we're saying is, listen, we know you have these temporary surges. We know that over the holidays, Valentine's Day, etc., that you see these surges, and that's included. The ability for us to scale up and cover you for your surges is included in the price. And then finally, we've got the 24/by monitoring, application, and infrastructure support. So that's the package. That's what you get when you buy Magento Cloud Enterprise Edition. So to talk a little bit about these peaks and how this works. So we know that, you get these, crazy traffic spells. This is the nature of being in the e-commerce game, that we see a lot of extra traffic around key times of the year. And most of the time, this is pretty predictable. You can look at your web analytics from last year. You know when this is going to happen. And we'll encourage you to let us know when this is going to happen. But ultimately, the way that the infrastructure works, the way that the combination of the PaaS and the AWS environment works, is that we use a vertical scaling mechanism. And so what we actually start to do is we know that there's a need for increasing the capacity. We actually, because we're in a triple redundant environment, we actually take one environment down and we double it, and we take the next one down and we double it, and we take the next one down and we double it. And we'll do that again and again, and we'll double and double and double as we need to meet the demand and capacity. And we can do that in a very rapid, automated fashion. So we can react very, very quickly to these spikes in demand, whether they're planned or unplanned. And so we want to sort of remove the complexity for the merchants of having to sort of worry about and think about this. In the traditional sort of on-premise server environment, you have to plan for this, and you have to sort of think ahead and say, well, what was our peak from last year? What was the highest demand we had? And then we got to forecast, work with marketing, work with merchandising. What are we expecting our growth to be this year? Then we have to build in a buffer of that, and then we have to go buy compute capacity. We have to buy server capacity for that worst case scenario. And it's expensive, and so we typically end up with a lot of idle capacity that we've paid for with our hosting partner that is being unused. And that's really one of the biggest drivers that's driven a lot of our existing merchants to the cloud already. As we said earlier, 30% of our Enterprise Edition customers today are already hosting in AWS, and many others are hosting in other cloud environments. And it's this ability to only pay for what you use is really, really a key value prop of the cloud, making sure that the cost of hosting is very, very economical and that you're not paying for compute capacity that you're not using. So what about if you're an existing merchant? How does this work? How do I get to cloud? This is probably going to be one of the #1 questions that we're going to have. So let's take you through the track here. If you're an existing Enterprise Edition 2 merchant. So you've taken Enterprise Edition 2 since we released it in November. You've started a project, whether that's live yet or whether you're still in development. The move to cloud for those merchants will be relatively simple. It's really a case of converting your existing contract, your existing Enterprise Edition contract, to a cloud contract. And so you want to talk to your customer success rep, your account rep, and we can take you through what that process looks like. We can give you pricing for the cloud. And like I said, it's a relatively easy conversion process. It's about taking your existing Enterprise Edition license. We will effectively cancel that, refund you for the unused term on that license, and convert you to a new Enterprise Cloud Edition license. And just to be clear, if you don't like that Enterprise Cloud Edition license at some point in the future, we can convert you back again. So if you want to go from 2 years from now, 3 years from now, our cloud isn't the right fit for you, then we will give you that complete flexibility in our contracts to go back down to an on-premise Enterprise Edition. Now, for Enterprise Edition 1 merchants, and we appreciate that's probably the bulk of you in the room, a little bit unfortunately, a little bit more complexity. So the cloud offering is only there for Magento 2. There's a number of reasons for that, both sort of technically and at a scalability level. We decided to make the cloud offering only for Magento 2 merchants. So if you're a Magento 1 merchant, an Enterprise Edition merchant, you do have to do an upgrade first. And we hope all of you are starting to plan your Magento 2 upgrades anyway. We hope this is a little bit of an incentive for you to do those upgrades maybe a little earlier than you had otherwise planned. But ultimately, the first thing to do is to do that upgrade from Magento 1 to Magento 2, to work with your solution partner, to work with your development teams, put a plan in place for that upgrade, get the costs for that upgrade done. Now, once you're committed to the upgrade, and once you have a date for that upgrade being completed, as soon as you're on the Magento 2 code base, then we can convert you to the cloud and to that Enterprise Cloud Edition license. So it's really just an additional step, but we do need you to be on Magento 2 before we can run you in the cloud. So that's really it. We're, like I said on the stage in the keynote, we're very, very excited to bring this to market. It's going to be generally available May 1st, so we are selling this May 1st, and we're more than happy to talk to you and give you more information. The whole Magento team, the cloud team, will be in the solutions zone. We have the cloud lounge there, so please come along. Please come and ask us questions. We will be more than happy to sort of talk to you about your projects, talk to you about sort of anything we haven't answered here. I know I'm sure there's a lot of sort of technical questions, business questions, pricing questions, etc. So please come. We'll start having those conversations. We've tried to make the pricing as simple as we can. It's a predictable fixed annual pricing structure based on your GMV bands and based on your baseline customer traffic and order volumes. So it's going to be reasonably simple for us. We'll have a few questions for you about your current revenues and your current web analytics stats, but very, very relatively easily we can get you pricing for the Magento Cloud Edition. So come find out more at the Cloud Lounge. If you're an existing customer, if you're an existing enterprise customer, speak to your customer success or sales rep, and please register interest. So that's it. I hope, I think it's, based on the reaction, I think this is something that, we know, having talked to a lot of our existing merchants and talked to a lot of our partners, we know this is something that you've been waiting for, and we're very, very excited to finally bring this to market. So thank you.